Elon Musk walked slowly through the corridors of his old school in Pretoria, but suddenly he stopped. The janitor who was scrubbing the floors outside the principal's office looked vaguely familiar. It was the same janitor he remembered from his childhood, only now he was clearly well into his 80s. Before we get back to that, I'd love to know where you're watching this video from today, and if you like these stories, make sure you subscribe because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. Elon Musk walked through the dimly lit hallways of his old school in Pretoria, South Africa. It had been decades since he last stepped foot here, yet everything felt eerily familiar. The same cracked walls, the faint scent of dusty textbooks, the distant echoes of childhood laughter. But then, he stopped. A janitor was scrubbing the floors near the principal's office. At first glance, it seemed like just another old man lost in his routine. But something about him, something familiar, made Elon narrow his eyes. "Excuse me," Elon said, his voice hesitant. "What's your name?" The elderly man turned around slowly. His face was wrinkled, his hands rough from years of labor. But the moment their eyes met, Elon felt his breath hitch. It was him. The same janitor who had been here when Elon was just a boy. But now, he was old, too old. He had to be at least 80. Why was he still working? And why did his tired eyes hold a sadness that no polite smile could hide? Elon had no idea that this moment would change everything. Elon stood frozen for a moment, staring at the elderly janitor. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken questions. "Mr. Hendricks?" Elon finally said, his voice carrying a mixture of disbelief and concern. The old man's lips curled into a small, tired smile. "Ah, so you remember me," he chuckled weakly, gripping his mop. "You were the quiet one, always reading those science magazines in the corner." Elon couldn't help but smile, but the warmth quickly faded as a thought gnawed at him. "Why are you still here?" The janitor sighed and leaned against his mop. "Same reason as always, son. Bills don't pay themselves." Something twisted inside Elon's chest. A man who had dedicated his entire life to this school should be retired, resting, enjoying his later years, not scrubbing floors at the age of 80. Elon's mind raced. He had built companies that revolutionized the world. He had launched rockets into space, changed the automobile industry, and was working on colonizing Mars. And yet, standing here, he felt powerless in the face of a simple, undeniable truth: this man had been forgotten by the world. Not if I can help it, Elon thought. But first, he needed to know the full story. Elon stared at the elderly janitor before him, a strange wave of recognition washing over him. He knew this man. Back when school hallways felt like a prison and classmates seemed more like adversaries, Elon often found solace in the library. Books were his escape, his gateway to a world where he wasn't just another bullied kid, where his dreams weren't dismissed as crazy. But there was one person who always noticed him. "You again," a younger Mr. Hendricks had once said, catching Elon tucked away in a corner with a science magazine. Great minds are often lonely ones. At the time, Elon had brushed it off. Just words from a janitor. What did he know? But now, standing in front of the same man, now much older, much wearier, those words hit differently. This was the same man who had once offered him kindness when no one else had. But now, he was still here. Still working. Why? Elon cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Why are you still here?" Mr. Hendricks wiped his brow with the sleeve of his uniform and chuckled, though there was no real joy in it. "Life, son. It doesn't always give you choices." Elon frowned. "But you should have a pension. Savings. Something." The old man shook his head. "A pension? Have you ever heard of a janitor retiring comfortably?" Elon was silent. He hadn't thought about it that way. "Family, then? Doesn't anyone help you?" At this, Mr. Hendricks turned away, gripping the mop a little tighter. "I had a son once," he murmured. Elon felt a sudden tension in the air. He already knew where this was going, and he wasn't sure he wanted to hear it. Had? The janitor let out a slow breath. He wanted to be an engineer. Just like you. For the first time, Mr. Hendricks stopped working. He leaned against the mop handle, as if the weight of the past had suddenly become too much to carry. Elon waited. He didn't push, just listened. My boy was brilliant. Smart, ambitious, but we didn't have money for college. So he worked. Took night shifts, saved up. He was going to get there eventually, I just knew it. The old man's voice wavered. But one night, he was driving home from work. A drunk driver ran a red light. Hit him head on. Silence. Elon swallowed. He didn't know what to say. Died on impact, Mr. Hendricks whispered. Gone before he ever got the chance to chase his dreams. Elon looked at the man's hands, rough, scarred from decades of work. Hands that had likely held his sons when he was just a boy. Hands that had probably cleaned up after hundreds of kids like Elon himself. And yet, the world had moved on, leaving him behind. Elon took a slow breath. That must have been a long time ago. 30 years. And you've been working here ever since? Mr. Hendricks nodded. Someone had to pay the bills. Someone had to keep going. Elon clenched his fists. This man had given everything he had to this school, to this job, and yet, in the end, he had nothing. No security. No savings. No one looking out for him. It wasn't just unfair. It was unacceptable. Elon looked at the old janitor, then at the worn-down mop in his hands, then at the cracked tiles beneath their feet. No. He wasn't going to let this go. He wasn't going to be another person who heard this story and simply walked away. I need you to do me a favor, Elon said, his voice firmer than before. Mr. Hendricks raised an eyebrow. A favor? Yes. Elon smiled. Take the rest of the day off. I have an idea. The janitor chuckled. And what kind of idea is that? Elon's smile widened. The kind that changes everything. Elon crossed his arms, his analytical mind now fully engaged. Mr. Hendricks, tell me the truth. Why haven't you retired? Don't you have a pension? The old janitor chuckled, shaking his head. Pension? Son, the school barely paid enough for me to survive, let alone save. Elon frowned. And your family? Do you have anyone to take care of you? A shadow passed over Mr. Hendricks' face. He let out a slow breath, gripping the mop handle tighter. Had a son once, he murmured. Lost him in a car accident years ago. My wife, she passed not long after. It's just me now. Elon felt a strange mix of sadness and anger boiling inside him. This man had given his entire life to this school, to keeping the halls clean for generations of students, yet he had been left with nothing. No safety net. No support. That's not right, Elon said, almost to himself. Mr. Hendricks simply shrugged. Life isn't always fair, son. You just do what you have to. But Elon wasn't the kind of man to accept unfair as an answer. His mind was already racing through possibilities, solutions. He had the power to change this man's life. No, he would change this man's life. Mr. Hendricks turned back to his work, but Elon wasn't done yet. I need you to do me a favor, Elon said, his voice firm. The old man looked up, surprised. What kind of favor? Elon smiled. Take the rest of the day off. I have an idea. Mr. Hendricks chuckled. And what kind of idea is that? Elon's smile widened. The kind that changes everything. Elon Musk was used to solving problems. From rocket launches to self-driving cars, he had built his empire on finding answers where others saw dead ends. But this wasn't an engineering problem. This wasn't a funding issue or a logistical challenge. This was something deeper. Mr. Hendricks had spent over 60 years working, not to build wealth, not to grow a company, but just to survive. His life had been a constant, exhausting cycle, working, barely making ends meet, and giving everything he had to a world that had given him nothing in return. Elon felt something stir inside him. Frustration? Guilt? Anger? Maybe all of it. But most of all, he felt determination. He wasn't about to just walk away. As soon as Elon left the school, he pulled out his phone. His first call was to his personal research team. I need everything on a man named William Hendricks. Full financials, medical history, family background, whatever you can find. His second call was to his financial strategist. How much money would it take to give a man in his 80s a comfortable retirement? Not just enough to get by, I mean enough so he never has to work again, ever. His third call was to his real estate agent. Find me a house in Pretoria. A good one. No stairs, easy access, near a hospital. Something a man in his 80s can live in without problems. 3 calls. 3 problems. 3 solutions, coming soon. It didn't take long for the reports to come in. The first one hit like a punch to the gut. Police car light financial report. Police car light. Right arrow bank account balance, less than $200. Right arrow retirement savings, $0. Right arrow debt, ongoing medical expenses, past due rent. Elon exhaled sharply. The second report wasn't much better. Police car light living conditions. Police car light. Right arrow apartment, small, falling apart. Right arrow safety, high crime area. Right arrow monthly rent, takes 80% of his paycheck. The third report? It made Elon's hands tighten into fists. Police car light medical report. Police car light. Right arrow condition, chronic arthritis, untreated for years. Right arrow reason, couldn't afford proper medication. Right arrow doctor visits, skipped because he didn't have enough money. Elon closed his eyes for a moment. This man wasn't just working at 80 years old. He was suffering in silence. And nobody, not the school, not the government, not the people around him, had done anything to help. That was about to change. That evening, Elon returned to the school. Mr. Hendricks was still there, pushing his mop across the worn-out floors. For a second, Elon just watched him. This was a man who had spent his entire life cleaning up after others. It was time someone cleaned up for him. Elon walked up and placed a hand on the old man's shoulder. "You're done here," he said. Mr. Hendricks turned, frowning. "What do you mean?" Elon handed him an envelope. Inside was a property deed and a retirement fund contract, all legally signed, all finalized. A new house. A bank account with enough money to last the rest of his life. Full medical coverage. No more work. Ever. Mr. Hendricks opened the envelope with shaking hands. His eyes moved across the papers. Then he looked up at Elon, blinking rapidly, as if trying to process what he was seeing. This can't be real." Elon nodded. "It's real." The old janitor's lips trembled. His voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you do this for me?" Elon took a deep breath. "Because when I was a kid, you were one of the only people who were kind to me." Mr. Hendricks swallowed hard, still staring at the papers in his hands. Elon continued. "And because a man who has given his entire life to helping others shouldn't be forgotten." A single tear slipped down the janitor's cheek. For the first time in decades, he felt something he had long forgotten. Hope. Elon Musk didn't waste time. As soon as he left the school, he pulled out his phone and started making calls. If there was one thing he knew how to do, it was solving problems fast. His first call was to his personal assistant. "I need a full financial report on a man named William Hendricks. He's been working as a janitor at Pretoria Boys High School for decades. Find out if he has any debts, medical expenses, anything." Next, he called one of his team members at Tesla. "Draft a retirement package for a long-time worker, something sustainable." Enough for comfortable living, plus medical care. Finally, he made a call to his real estate manager. Find a small but comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood in Pretoria. Something well maintained, no stairs, he's an older gentleman. Buy it outright. Elon had built his empire on speed and efficiency, and he wasn't about to let bureaucracy slow him down. Within hours, reports started coming in. Mr. Hendricks had no retirement savings, no pension, and was barely making ends meet. His small rental apartment was falling apart. Worst of all, he had been skipping doctor visits because he couldn't afford them. Elon clenched his jaw. This wasn't just unfair. This was unacceptable. Elon Musk was not a man who made empty promises. The moment he told Mr. Hendricks, "You're never going to work another day in your life," something inside him locked into place. This wasn't just an act of kindness anymore. It was a mission. The kind that made him launch SpaceX. The kind that made him take Tesla from near bankruptcy to global dominance. The kind that made him put everything on the line to achieve what people called impossible. Only this time, the mission wasn't about rockets or AI. It was about one man, and all the others like him who had been left behind. Back in his hotel room in Pretoria, Elon's laptop was open, his phone buzzing with activity. He was running this operation the way he'd run a high-stakes SpaceX launch. No wasted time. No unnecessary steps. Just results. He opened a spreadsheet on his screen. Rocket operation, unsung hero rocket. Small Blue Diamond mission, retire Mr. Hendricks comfortably. Small Blue Diamond timeline, 48 hours. Small Blue Diamond budget, unlimited. Tasks. White heavy checkmark, find the perfect home. White heavy checkmark, set up financial security. White heavy checkmark, handle medical expenses. White heavy checkmark, make sure he never has to work again. Elon cracked his knuckles. Let's get to work. The first priority? A house. Not just any house, a real home. Elon called his real estate team. I need a single-story house, fully paid for, move-in ready. Needs to be safe, accessible, close to good medical care. No stairs. Big windows. Clean air. Budget? The agent asked. Elon smirked. Doesn't matter. Within 3 hours, he had options. House with garden option 1, a quiet home in a gated community, fully furnished. House with garden option 2, a cozy house near a lake, surrounded by nature. House with garden option 3, a modern smart home with voice-controlled features, perfect for an elderly man. Elon chose all three. He'd let Mr. Hendricks pick which one he wanted. If he couldn't decide, then he'd own all three and visit them whenever he wanted. Next, the financial plan. Elon called his financial strategist. How much do I need to set up a trust fund that ensures Hendricks never has to worry about money again? The answer came fast. With interest, around $5 million will cover all his living expenses, healthcare, and emergencies for life. Elon nodded. Make it $10 million, just in case. Understood. What's the source? Elon didn't hesitate. Take it from my personal account. There was zero corporate involvement. No Tesla. No SpaceX. No PR stunt. This wasn't a charity. This was a personal debt, one that Elon refused to leave unpaid. With the house and financials locked in, only one thing remained: Hendricks' health. That's when Elon received the call that changed everything. Police car light, Mr. Musk, there's something you need to know. Police car light. It was the private medical team he had hired to review Mr. Hendricks' health records. There are complications, the doctor said hesitantly. His untreated arthritis is severe, but that's not the real issue. Elon's heart tightened. Then what is? A pause. Then. He's been refusing treatment for years. Elon frowned. Why? We don't know. He never applied for any healthcare benefits, never sought any financial help. If he had come in years ago, his condition would be much better now. Elon's mind raced. Why would a man who had spent his entire life working refuse to get help? And then he realized. He wasn't refusing. He was hiding something. Elon was back at the school within the hour. Mr. Hendricks was exactly where he'd left him, still mopping, still doing a job that shouldn't be his anymore. Elon walked up and took the mop from his hands. "Sit down," he said firmly. Mr. Hendricks hesitated. "Elon, hi." "Sit." The old janitor sighed and lowered himself onto a bench. Elon looked him in the eye. "Why didn't you get treatment?" Hendricks froze. "You had options," Elon pressed. "You could have applied for assistance. But you didn't." "Why?" A long silence. Then, finally, Hendricks whispered something that made Elon's stomach drop. "Because I wasn't the one who needed it most." Elon leaned forward. "What do you mean?" The old janitor swallowed hard. "I never told you about my brother." Elon's heart skipped a beat. "Brother?" "Daniel," Mr. Hendricks continued, his voice quiet. "My twin. We grew up together. Became teachers together. But life wasn't fair to him." Elon listened intently. "He got sick. Real sick. No insurance. No help. If I had taken money for myself, I wouldn't have been able to keep him alive." Mr. Hendricks' eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I worked every day, every night, just to make sure he had food, medicine, everything." Elon exhaled sharply. The old man hadn't been working for himself. He had been fighting for someone else. Someone who might not have much time left. Elon stood up instantly. "Where is he now?" Mr. Hendricks hesitated. "Home." Elon grabbed his phone. Not for long. News traveled fast, especially when it involved Elon Musk. The next morning, headlines exploded across social media and news outlets. Rocket Elon Musk changes janitor's life in a single day. Moneybag Musk buys house, gives full retirement fund to his former school janitor. Red Heart, a billionaire with a heart, Musk's unexpected act of kindness goes viral. Within hours, the internet was ablaze with discussions. Some people were deeply moved, praising Musk for his generosity. "This is what billionaires should be doing," one person tweeted. "Imagine if every rich person did something like this for the people who helped them along the way." But not everyone was impressed. "This is just PR. If he really cared, he'd fix the whole system, not just one guy. One act of kindness doesn't erase capitalism's problems." Elon ignored the noise. He hadn't done this for attention, he had done it because it was the right thing to do. But what happened next was unexpected. That evening, his inbox flooded with messages from former students of Pretoria Boys High School. "Mr. Hendricks was always kind to me when I had no friends. I remember him helping me clean up after I spilled my lunch in the cafeteria. He told me to never give up on my dreams when I was struggling in school. He deserves this and more." Elon hadn't realized how many lives this one man had touched. Then came another surprise. A well-known billionaire philanthropist reached out. "Your story inspired me, Elon. I want to do the same for someone who helped me in my youth. Let's start something bigger." And just like that, an idea began forming in Musk's mind. Maybe this wasn't just about one janitor. Maybe it was the beginning of something much bigger. Elon Musk didn't set out to make headlines. He wasn't doing this for publicity. But when a billionaire walks into an old school, finds his childhood janitor still working at 80, and gives him a house, a retirement fund, and full medical care, people notice. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Rocket Elon Musk changes a janitor's life overnight. Moneybag Musk buys home, retirement fund for school worker who never gave up. Red Hart, the billionaire who remembers Musk's act of kindness, goes viral. Within hours, the internet exploded. Thousands of comments. Millions of shares. A story that refused to be ignored. But as always, the internet had two sides. On one hand, people were inspired. Speech balloon, this is what billionaires should be doing. Speech balloon, imagine if every rich person helped the people who shaped them. Speech balloon, this just made me cry. Respect, Elon. On the other hand, the skeptics came out. Speech balloon, one janitor? What about the millions of others? Speech balloon, this is just a PR stunt. Speech balloon, if he really cared, he'd fix the system, not just one guy. Elon? He ignored the noise. This wasn't about the internet. This was about Mr. Hendricks. And now, his brother. Then something unexpected happened. Elon's inbox started filling up. Not with random emails. Not with business proposals. But with stories. Memo, my old teacher still works at 75 because he can't afford to retire. Memo, our cafeteria lady has been serving food for 40 years and she can barely afford rent. Memo, there are so many Mr. Hendricks out there. How do we help them all? Elon read every single one. And with every story, his anger grew. How many more people had been forgotten? How many more were suffering in silence? This wasn't just about one janitor anymore. This was bigger. And Elon Musk? He never thought small. Then came the real shockwave. The story wasn't just viral, it reached the top. Police car light Jeff Bezos, Musk's story got me thinking. Time to give back in a bigger way. Police car light Oprah, this is what impact looks like. Count me in. Police car light Bill Gates, teachers, janitors, nurses, so many are overlooked. Let's fix that. Within days, other billionaires, CEOs, and celebrities were jumping in. Moneybag donations started pouring in. House with garden retirement funds were set up. Red Hart people who had been forgotten were finally being seen. Elon sat back, watching it unfold. One act of kindness had sparked a movement. But there was still unfinished business. Despite everything, the viral story, the billionaires jumping in, the donations flooding social media, Elon's mind was somewhere else. He couldn't stop thinking about what Mr. Hendricks had told him. I wasn't the one who needed help the most. There was someone else. Someone sick. Someone suffering. Someone who might not have much time left. Elon picked up his phone. Get me an update on Daniel Hendricks, he told his team. A moment later, a reply came. Police car light not good. Condition worsening. Needs immediate specialized care, police car light. Elon's jaw tightened. This wasn't over. He had changed one life. Now, he was about to save another. Elon Musk had sparked revolutions before. Rocket, he had changed the way rockets were built. High voltage, he had changed the way cars were driven. Brain, he was working on changing the way humans thought. But this wasn't about technology. This was about people. And it had just gotten bigger than he ever imagined. Elon sat in the back of his Tesla, phone pressed to his ear. The world outside was erupting over his act of kindness. Fire news anchors were debating it. Loudspeaker protesters were using it to highlight failing retirement systems. Moneybag billionaires were stepping up, eager to do their part. But Elon wasn't focused on any of it. His eyes were locked on a single screen, a medical report. Police car light patient, Daniel Hendricks, police car light. Right arrow age, 81. Right arrow condition, critical. Untreated for years. Right arrow prognosis, worsening. Limited time. Right arrow recommended action, immediate specialized care. Elon's grip tightened around his phone. Find me the best doctors in the world. I don't care where they are. I don't care what it costs. We're saving him. His assistant hesitated. Elon, with his condition. I didn't ask for an opinion. Silence. Then. Understood. I'll get back to you within the hour. While Elon's team scrambled to find a medical miracle, something unexpected was happening. People weren't just talking about what he did. They were acting. Rocket in California, a group of ex-Tesla engineers pooled money to help their former janitor retire. House with Garden in New York, a billionaire bought homes for 5 retired teachers who had shaped his life. Moneybag in London, a hedge fund manager created a trust to support elderly cafeteria workers. It was spreading. But the biggest shock? Lightbulb, a software developer in Texas, launched a website, Who Changed Your Life? It let people nominate unsung heroes, janitors, teachers, bus drivers, who had shaped their lives but were now struggling. Within 24 hours. Fire over 50,000 nominations. Fire millions in donations pouring in. Fire, a global movement had started. And it all began because of one janitor. Elon wasn't alone anymore. His phone was blowing up with texts from people at the very top. Speech balloon Jeff Bezos, this movement is getting big. Let's coordinate. Just bought a retirement complex for ex-teachers. Speech balloon Oprah, we need to make this long-term. Let's strategize. Speech balloon Bill Gates, this is systemic. What's our approach to sustainability? Elon leaned back, exhaling. They were all in. A group chat was created. The Unsung Heroes Initiative. Members, Musk, Bezos, Gates, Oprah, Buffett, Zuckerberg, and more. Goal, Fire, create a self-sustaining fund to help forgotten workers worldwide. This was no longer just a trending story. This was history. Amid the chaos, Elon finally got the call he was waiting for. His team had found a way to save Daniel Hendricks. Police car light Elon, we found a specialist. The best in the world. But what? Police car light, he says this case is unusual. We pulled Daniel's old records and there's something strange. Elon sat up. What do you mean? Police car light, Daniel shouldn't be alive right now. By all medical logic, he should have passed away years ago. Elon's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? Police car light, we think there's more to this story. Hendricks hasn't told you everything. Elon froze. For the first time in years, he didn't know what was coming next. But one thing was certain. He was about to find out. Elon Musk didn't hesitate. The moment he heard that Daniel Hendricks shouldn't be alive, he was on the phone with Mr. Hendricks. I need the truth. Now. A long pause. Then, a heavy sigh. Come see him. Within an hour, Elon was at the doorstep of a small, run-down house. Mr. Hendricks led him inside. There, in a dimly lit room, lay Daniel Hendricks. His breathing was weak, but his eyes, sharp, intelligent, locked onto Elon. You finally found me, he rasped. Elon frowned. What do you mean? Daniel exhaled a slow, pained breath. I knew you'd come eventually. A chill ran down Elon's spine. Daniel, he said carefully. Why did the doctors say you shouldn't be alive? Daniel smiled faintly. Because I shouldn't be. Elon didn't blink. Explain. Mr. Hendricks sat beside his brother, gripping his frail hand. He refused treatment not just because of money, but because he made a choice. Daniel coughed, then whispered, I was part of something bigger. An old experiment. It was supposed to extend life, only it failed. But I survived, longer than I should have. Elon's mind raced. An experiment? Was this why Daniel had lived beyond expectations? Who ran it? Daniel just smiled. That's a story for another time. His breath hitched. The room fell silent. Then, one final whisper. You were meant to find me, Elon. Now go, and do something bigger. His eyes closed. And just like that, he was gone.